Hello and welcome to the first round of the second Cycling Ireland Zwift League. We're on the R.G.V course in France today for the first of 8 rounds of a series which will take us through the darkest months of the year. This second edition of the hugely popular online league promoted by Cycling Ireland is an important outlet for riders keeping busy at a difficult time for all. Earlier this week we caught up with Scott Graham, Marketing and Communications Manager of Cycling Ireland, to discuss the value of the league and the new format in place this time round.
It's difficult for people at the moment. Obviously, we've got level 5 restrictions at the moment, and a lot of club spins and events and so on are not happening, unfortunately. But I suppose with the Zwift League, there's something to look forward to, something to keep people engaged, motivated, and just, I guess, develop that kind of sense of community between everybody.
And we've changed it up a little bit this time round. There are a few alterations and innovations and developments that are going to make it pretty interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first time around, I think when we originally did the Zwift League, it was very new to people and they'd never really been on the platform before. So it was more of a straight up kind of race, nearly a replication in some ways of road racing. But this time people are a lot more familiar with it. They understand there's the kind of gamification aspect to it. So this time we have a mix of scratch races and points races with intermediate preems. And we've also introduced the power-ups, which some people will be familiar with, but it just adds that kind of level of tactics to it. And I guess it should make the racing a lot more unpredictable.
How important is the Cycling Ireland Zwift League to the portfolio of events that are made available by Cycling Ireland? I think it's notable that certainly in the first edition of the series, there were quite a few riders that came in that were relatively new to the sport.
Yeah, you're dead right. I mean, it's certainly it's launched onto our radar over the last year. It's something that we had kind of looked at before the restrictions came in March, but it's definitely accelerated and it has become, a nice popular addition to the racing calendar. I mean, nothing replicates being out on the road, but it is a nice introduction for some people. And as you said there, it has attracted a lot of new people into the sport and also people crossing over from other disciplines. I guess it's just because it is so easy to do and it's kind of in a controlled environment. You can easily just jump up on your turbo on a Saturday morning. You get a really great workout done in kind of 45, 50 minutes or an hour. So, it has been beneficial for people like that.
And anything coming in the future, anything in your crystal ball, do you see events-wise?
Yeah, I mean, well, we're hoping obviously that if the restrictions ease off a little bit, that the cyclocross season will return and we'll have a return to some normality next year in terms of being out on the road and on the trails and so on. But on the Zwift side of things, we're talking to Zwift at the moment about an e-racing national championships next year and seeing how we can get that up and running. And also we're looking forward to having some Irish representation in the e-racing world championships, which is being run by the UCI on the 8th and 9th of December.
Well, I'm delighted to say I'm joined once more by Ronan McLaughlin, a world Everesting record setter since the last Cycling Ireland Zwift League, and also now the technical editor of the influential Cycling Tips website. Ronan, great to see you once more, and we're all very much looking forward to this second edition of the Cycling Ireland Zwift League. The organisers have come up with one or two innovations this time round.
Thank you for having me back. It's great to see the Zwift League return again and something to look forward to for the whole winter here. And yeah, they've certainly spiced it up a little bit this time. We've got a traditional, so to speak, scratch race today just to get us started again. Very much similar to what we had in the spring there. But going forward, I think it's going to be alternative weeks that we're going to have points races, which will certainly bring a bit more action to the race and certainly bring in a few extra names into the fold for every race who maybe might not have been up there in an out battle for the finish line, but when it comes down to points, it's a very different story. And welcome addition as well is the use of power-ups in this edition of the league. And I think everybody has an opinion on power-ups. Should they be in racing? Shouldn't they? But it certainly brings an extra dimension to the racing. It's going to make it, in my opinion, only much more exciting. Again, it gives many more riders a chance of being in the thick of the action. And there's a huge tactical aspect to the power ups as well. It's great getting a power up, but knowing when to use it and how to use it best, and every power up has its own best use application. And the tactical end of it is just knowing how to get the most out of that power up that you get. And yes, it is a bit random what power up you might get and when you get assigned it, but really it's rider tactical know-how that comes down to when to use them and when to use them best, and getting the most out of those power ups. So yeah, it's going to be an exciting league.
It's a more mature competitor base now, isn't it? And they're more familiar with the game. Many people will already know how the power-ups work and how to play it. Some might be coming to it a little bit colder, but I think certainly it's a good time to introduce it.
I think so. Yeah, there was a call for it in the spring edition of the league, that a lot of people wanted power ups, but I think the right decision was made then just to keep it about racing. Then there's a lot, as you said, a lot of people were just getting into Zwift back then. Unfortunately, enforced upon us, but I don't think there's anybody looking at it now as something that is anything that it's been enforced on them now. They're just making the most of the platform that is available to us. Coming into the Irish winter, as we all know, it gets harder and harder to get out, and certainly, Zwift had been growing in popularity year on year anyway, and now with the introduction of the Cycling Ireland Zwift League, there probably isn't a cyclist in the country that hasn't heard of a Zwift, or they're at this stage of the numbers that haven't been on Zwift at all is very, very small. Everybody's sort of utilizing it to improve their winter training, and now you've got an outlet for your competitive urge during the winter as well. You don't have to wait until the first weekend of March to get that racing. Cycling Ireland's providing racing the whole way through the winter now through the Zwift League. So yeah, certainly a great addition, and something that more and more people are utilizing now. And you can see that right the way down through the ranks. It's in all the races today, there's big numbers entered. So
well, we're certainly looking forward to next week with the first of the points races, which, if you're a track racer, I think anyone will be familiar with that style of racing, where it's an accumulation of points as opposed to first across the line. Important to emphasise, of course, that this first round is a traditional scratch race. It is very much the first rider across the line wins in the sort of conventional format. But from next week on, a series of sprints along the way, double points at the finish line. A lot of calculations to be made when your lungs are bursting.
Yeah, and probably going to be quite a bit of calculations for me and you as well. And that it in the opening rounds, I think it became quite difficult for us to tell at times who was where on the course. And now we're also going to have to keep track of who got where in each sprint along the way. But that will add to it and keeps it exciting. And again, it's never over until the final sprint now, because if you miss out on points and any of them, that's going to seriously affect your chances overall. So even coming into the final sprint, if you're not exactly on top of the points there, you could quickly see yourself bounce right up the rankings. Should you get a good position there, and it's important to remember as well that yes, it's points on the sprints that add up here, but you don't have to sprint to get those points. You can still make breakaways, you can still make attacks, and if you haven't got a sprint, that's the tactic you need to be playing. Is how can I get away before the bunch sprint here to try and pick up points that I might not pick up otherwise if it is a mass sprint. So there will still it is a sprint race, but it's not for sprinters, if that makes sense.
And of course, points being accumulated towards the series as we go on in each of the races, regardless of whether it's a scratch race or a points event, and points for top 50 as well. So an opportunity for more riders to be included in the final tot up.
Yeah, certainly. It's and what I'm hoping that does as well is it just opens up people to have a bit more bravery and going for those sort of big all-out attacks. That it's not a case of if you don't get inside the top 5 or top 10 that you get no points at all, and that seriously hampers your overall ranking. If you've got the security, or the safety net, that's even if the attack doesn't work out, you're still probably going to get points. You can keep yourself in the front half of the bunch, and that might hopefully open up the racing a bit more. And should someone get one of those burrito power-ups that helps them get away in a breakaway, or the invisibility power-up, it hopefully will bring that dimension to the racing as well, where rather than being a race of attrition where we've got riders falling off the back of the group. Let's hope we see some competitive action from the front of the race this time around in the league, and hopefully we'll see riders attacking off the front and giving us some great action.
Well, we look forward to that. Tell us a little bit about the course that the riders are going to face today.
Well, it's the R.G.V. It's short for Route Grande Vitesse, and I don't think you need to be fluent in French to figure out that means the high-speed road. And as that suggests, it's probably one for the sprinters today. It's as flat as you're going to get, with one climb, so to speak, on the course there, the Aqueduct KOM. But again, it doesn't climb up a huge amount. We use quite a lot of these roads in the Zwift race that we had just prior to the Tour de France there. We passed the Mont Saint Michel and Sunflower Fields and all that are synonymous with the Tour de France. But we don't have the climb at the end this time, and it should, on paper anyway, it's always the riders that decide the race, but on paper it looks like it could come down to a sprint today, and hopefully we get a nice sprint to call into the line here.
Well, thanks for that, Rowan. Certainly we'll look forward to see how that works out. Well, why don't we head over now to the start line to see who's getting ready for the first round of the series. The beginning of the second edition of the Cycling Ireland Zwift League. Riders on the rollers and preparing for the big wind-up. And Ronan, as always, worth reminding everyone that a good start is half the battle. Mateo Chigala among the riders that we're picking out on the start line, getting set to get underway. Riders were also expecting to keep an eye out for the likes of Richard Barry, fifth in the first Cycling Ireland Zwift League, who is an entrant in this event. Dennis Dunworth is in there, Tommy Evans, Emmett Dunleavy, Lindsay Watson, we understand, has signed on. He's going to certainly be a rider to watch out for. Eddie Brennan, Heather Foley as well, among the women competitors in this event. And as I said, Ronan, good starts, half the battle. So within 20 seconds to go now, and the riders need to make sure that they've got the watts up to, well, near maximum. First couple of minutes are so key, so vital. This is going to be one of the flattest courses that the riders will face in this entire Cycling Ireland Zwift League. That doesn't mean it's not without its challenges along the way. One or two little grippers that will offer an opportunity for a separation. And we're underway in the Cycling Ireland Zwift League, the second edition of this league in the first round. And Mateo Chigala making sure he's close to the head of affairs right from the get-go, as indeed is Heather Foley, the most prominent woman in this event, former national road race champion. And Heather Foley is making sure she's thereabouts. David Gearan, a man stepping up from the B category this year, is also well to the fore. Lindsay Watson knows how to play this. We've seen in performances of distinction from Lindsay Watson in the previous edition of the Cycling Ireland Zwift League. So those are the names to conjure with, the names to focus on. Mateo Chigala, former Italian World Championship competitor, raced at the World Championships as a junior for Italy a few years ago now, and he has been based in Ireland for several years and has set up a prominent coaching business and races as one of the top riders on the Irish local road scene. Also has raced abroad with Evo Pro Racing, with the Holdsworth racing team as well. And Chigala, who dipped his toe in the water on several occasions in the last Cycling Ireland Zwift League, may have a more focused approach to this. Perhaps we'll see how it's going to go for him and for others, as some of the names to keep an eye at. Porrico Flynn's made a pretty good start, Liam O'Brien as well, Gareth Barry and Gary Walker, Nathan Mullen. Emmett Dunleavy is an interesting character, very impressive runner in his day, and he'll be a man to watch out for. He's gone toe-to-toe with the likes of Mo Farah in park runs, they tell me. He was quite the exponent over 5k. Ronan, it's the typical and, as expected, pretty fast getaway, and Lindsay Watson well to the fore.
Yeah, we always expect to see that frantic start to the Zwift race, and today was no different. You see the riders basically sprinting with 5 seconds to go there, and that's just to make sure that they avoid any splits that might happen at the start. And it's I often wonder, if we all just agreed to start nice and easily, would it not be much more enjoyable rather than sprinting before the race even starts? It seems it seems a bit tough.
Good luck with that. Yeah, imagine getting that one organised. Yes. In fact, I read a great story just last night about the 1988 Giro d'Italia, where all the riders had an agreement that nobody would attack, until after they got over this really tricky little descent early in the stage, and everybody started off quite sensibly, apart from one of the leading contenders who attacked from the line, and that was it. Chaos ensued, and that's exactly what we've got in this slightly different event, Cycling Ireland Zwift League. Hard to get a consensus when we do have some very competitive riders in here who only are thinking about trying to get up front, and it's still a pretty large group that are vying for honours in this early stages. For all that it's been a fairly hectic getaway, still a big group in there.
Yeah, it is, and there's very little in this opening section of today's race that will cause riders much bother. So I'd imagine we'll stay quite compact like this for the majority of the race. You've got the Aqueduct KOM coming up that might cause a few splits in the bunch, but on a whole, today's course is very much of a sort of opener again for the riders to get back used to racing again. That sort of intensity is not it's not the most challenging of courses, but then again, it is always the riders and that can decide how hard or less hard that a race is. And certainly if we see some of the big names that we've got here today really lay down the power either on that Aqueduct KOM or a couple of little kickers coming in towards the finish, we could see a split.
Yeah, speeds across the virtual tarmac in approaching and indeed exceeding 50 kilometres an hour in these early stages. A little bit of pave to contend with. We'll keep an eye out to see how riders are dealing with their power-ups, and I think we can't really talk about this too much in the early stages, indeed, as we become familiar with how the riders are applying these opportunities tactically. But basically there are three sprint points along the way, 2 sprints, 1 King of the Mountains, and at those points immediately afterwards there will be a completely random distribution of power-ups, and they are those little tactical advantages that are offered to the riders. How they play them is up to them. They'll only have 1 power-up on offer at any one time. If they don't use it, they don't get another one at the next intermediate point. So the riders don't have anything tactically to play with at the moment. It's just about trying to stay in the group or maybe get off the front of it.
Yeah, and those power-ups, they should really open up the racing here. And had this race that we're looking at today been in the Zwift League in the spring, you'd almost be certain that it would come down to a sprint. But now with the power-ups added in here today, it should open up the racing a bit more, just giving riders the actual possibility to make attacks that can stick. We all know how hard it is to ride off the front of a bunch, and that's even harder in a Zwift race. But definitely with the power-ups here, it just gives that little bit of an opportunity that it does have its detractors, in that not everybody's a fan of the power-ups, but certainly I think it's going to bring a bit more excitement to the race here today, and I think it's a welcome addition from most.
Yeah, it is a game, albeit a game that's played with your lungs coming out through your ears. So it's an unusual aspect to it, but it's an athletic pursuit. It is a race, but it also is a game that has its tactical challenges, and that's the essence of bicycle road racing, whether outdoors or in, is being able to make decisions about how to play your chances. And play your opportunities as they become available to you, and be able to do it while you're feeling things at the most intense.
That's it, yeah. When you're at 180 or 190 heart rate, and your brain is a bit oxygen starved because you're just pumping all the oxygen you can to the working muscles. It's making those decisions that can win you or lose you a race. That's the real challenge, and that aspect of it it's the same whether you're racing indoors on Zwift or outdoors or in a track, or regardless of what discipline you're in. It's that ability to make good tactical decisions when the pressure's on that can sometimes separate those with all the watts in the world from those that have the ability to finish a race off.
Well, Liam O'Brien puts a little burst in there, over 6 watts per kilo, in order to maintain a position, well, initially on the front, then could be a slightly delicate moment, because just dangling off the back, and you make a huge effort like that, it really is tough to recover. And while the draft effect in the Cycling Ireland Zwift League, or in Zwift racing in general, is pretty impressive, it is certainly it's not enough sometimes if you've just made that huge effort.
I'm glad we cut away from that there, because I was getting flashbacks of being in lineouts and all sorts, and when that gap opens like that, it gets very, very hard to close. Everybody in front of you is benefiting from each other, and you're off the back just that 10 or 20 meters, and you're looking at the guy, or the rider just next in front of you at the back of the bunch, and they seem to be pedaling nice and easy because they're in the slipstream, and you're just off the back giving everything you can to try to catch up again. But there's very little you can do at that point when you're outside the slipstream. You just have to hope for a sort of an ease up in front of you, and that you can rejoin the peloton.
Picked up some live images from the garage, or his living room, from Mateo Chigala, and we will pick him up in the middle of the bunch as well. The Navan based, he's based in Meath, I believe, of late, Italian rider, riding in Ireland. Proud Irishman these days, isn't he? And we've certainly adopted him, and Mateo Chigala is safely nestled in that group. Dylan Hamber-Kelly to the head of affairs, Robin Wilson, Lindsay Watson, as we've mentioned, the man from Banbridge in County Down, powerhouse sport rider who won a medal, didn't he, at national championship level in Newcastle West. He won the bronze medal in the time trial in Newcastle West when the National Road Race Championships were finally able to be run. And well done to everyone involved at Newcastle West Cycling Club for getting the National Road Championships underway just a month and a half ago. It was a remarkable season in so many ways, and it's a remarkable year. And the popularity of indoor bike racing and Cycling Ireland Zwift League racing is evidenced by the uptake in entries for this second edition, and for riders who would often, I suppose, be heading into a winter season where they might be thinking of throttling back a little bit, are being racing again. Of course, a lot of riders are missing out on the outlet of cyclocross racing, which, and I suspect that quite a lot of riders who might have thought about doing some cyclocross league racing at this time are on their bikes in the garage.
Yeah, the cyclocross, the restrictions that we have at the moment mean that cyclocross can't happen, and that is a huge loss to everybody who has probably trained all through the summer hoping to get a cyclocross season. And this Zwift League that we have now, it's maybe not exactly what they were hoping for when they were putting in those hours during the summer, but at the same time, it's great to have some form of an outlet for their competitive urge and to be able to race in some capacity. And I think as well, you're going to have riders here who maybe were involved in the first Zwift League that we had back in spring, and they maybe took a bit of downtime over the summer, trained back up again, and are now looking forward to another 8 rounds of racing in this Cycling Ireland Zwift League. So it's a great addition to the calendar now, we should probably say, and it's not possible for everybody to, even in normal times, travel the length and breadth of the country to get racing, and the fact that the Zwift League now offers you racing in your own house, it's very hard to match that. And I think other sports would probably give anything to have the sort of platform that we have here.
It's intense stuff. Mateo Chigala in the middle of the group. We just picked out Daniel Ugren as well, one of the visitors from Sweden, who's taking part in this event. Of course, riders from all over the world, and indeed many riders from France have been tempted to take part in this first edition of the Cycling Ireland Zwift League. We'll see if there's any well-known names in there. That's happened on 1 or 2 occasions in recent times as well, hasn't it? As we catch sight of Lindsay Watson in the middle of the group, man from Banbridge in County Down. This is the first round of the Cycling Ireland Zwift League, the second edition of the league, and the first round over a total of 25 kilometres. It's a relatively short, sharp shock of an affair, and the warm-up for the riders would have been absolutely key. Jamie Gann is on the front of the group at the moment. I don't think any relation to Jamie McGann, who won the Ross a few years ago at this moment. Gary Walker's up there as well. Ronan McDonald We've got Price, Tushy, other names to conjure with, Van der Harst, Sjogren, so those visiting riders certainly making their presence felt. Paul MacArthur as well. Watson we've mentioned, Porco Flynn we've mentioned. It's all scrolling through, and there's quite the collection of riders. Emmett Dunleavy, as we've mentioned, is 19th at the moment, in safely nestling in the middle of the group. Dunleavy, of course, the ex-runner of some note, who took up cycling as part of his recovery process from a broken leg. One of the many riders who transitioned across from other sporting endeavours, sporting fields, and have decided to have a go at Zwift racing. David Gillick, of course, has been a very enthusiastic proponent of this particular style of racing. Stephen Scullion as well is a man who's set a qualifying time for the Tokyo Marathon, and he'll be hoping to get involved, as Lindsay Watson has created a little bit of daylight between himself and the group. Is this a full-blooded attack, or just finds himself 1.2 seconds clear of the field? It's the first bit of daylight we've seen, and they really don't want to give a rider of Lindsay Watson's calibre too much daylight.
No, certainly not. As you mentioned earlier, they're bronze medalist in the time trial national championships. He's got the power and that time trial and ability to ride, a long way on his own. But I didn't quite catch when he made the attack there, so I don't know if he sort of happened to find himself off the front or not. But he's certainly persevering with it here. Up around 6 watts per kilo there. But as we just we see now, the bunch is coming back to him, wise to not let such a strong and powerful rider away on his own. And that is sort of the tactic that Lindsay Watson's probably going to have to play today, and that if he waits for the sprint, the likes of Mateo Chigala and a couple of other sprinters in there are likely to outsprint them in a race for the line. So riders like Lindsay and others will probably have to come together first of all to try and make a move, and then the closer they get to the finish line, the less that camaraderie and the alliance will stand, and they'll eventually have to fight it out amongst themselves. But hopefully see some more attacking racing like that.
Robin Wilson from Northern Ireland is also well to the fore in the early stages. Quick reminder, of course, that this is a race of different groups, different categories, and they've all started 1 minute apart. So we've got A, B, C and D category riders, all separated by 1 minute. And indeed the A category group that we're focusing on in today's first round is also separated, A plus and A riders. So there are several riders in there who have been lifted to a slightly exalted level. It's also worth reminding as well that reminding you that the first 50 riders at the conclusion of today's event will score points in each category. So certainly there'll be quite a spread, and many will be counted, when many will be included, as Jamie Gahan is drawn back into the fold. That little bit of exuberance perhaps, and here I think we're coming up to the first sprint point of the day, hitting the pave, and the barriers along the side of the road. Can't be too far away from it at this point. We're down to the final 12 kilometers. Really is a short, sharp event.
Yeah, it sure is, and looking at potential winners if it does come down to a sprint finish today, we've got the guts of 10 riders in this A race with a 14 watt per kilo 15-second sprint on them, so it'll be very hard to pick a winner from that. Obviously Mateo Chigala is known as a sprinter to all of us here, but he'll certainly have some stiff competition today.
Yeah, quick reminder, of course, we're counting up on the on your screen, not counting down. The old habits die hard. It's 12 kilometres completed at this point of the 25 kilometres, and indeed we are through that pave sprint, and riders will now start to pick up the those randomly allocated power-ups, those little advantages. Worth telling people exactly what is on offer. Of course, they can get lightweight, they can get a draft boost, they can get an aero boost, and they'll have to try and play those and use those as they best feel. The draft boost, of course, increases their draft effect by up to 50% for 30 seconds, and many people believe that's in many ways one of the most valuable or most useful.
Yeah, certainly. They have different times that they can be used best. If you use the lightweight boost as you're coming into a sprint, it's not going to do you much good. But the likes of that aero boost, which will. I think if we can just see now on the screen, you can see a couple of trucks there above some of the riders, and that's an aero draft boost. So it is truck draft boost, it's called, and you know that obviously does what it says in the tin and gives you a draft. So the likes of that and the aero helmet boost would be very useful coming into a sprint, whereas they might not be so useful going uphill. So you know that's where the riders have to decide how best to use the power ups that they get. And as you mentioned earlier, you can only hold one power up at a time. So should they happen to get one that they maybe don't think is going to be too useful right now, they might be best to use that and try to get another power up before they come to the finish line.
Yes, that truck or van, as we mentioned, gives you that advantage when you're sitting in the group. It's no use if you're on your own out front, so you've got to pick the moment to use it. And we're seeing the feather, that little green, it's white feather on a green background that is floating above the head of the third rider in line there. Is it Walker? I think Gary Walker, who we just very briefly was using that lightweight. That's because they are going up a little bit of a hill, so there is an advantage if you make yourself just that little bit lighter. It reduces your weight by 9.5 kilograms, so that's not insignificant. So suddenly hills don't feel quite as difficult.
Certainly not, and I suppose the lighter you are, originally the more benefit that's going to give you as well. It's but we were just on the Aqueduct KOM there, so certainly one of the few time or points on today's course that feather lightweight power up would be of use.
And interestingly enough, we have got a little bit of a separation at the front. 3 seconds advantage of our group of 4 riders. Gary Walker, that we see, has used that power up to great advantage to join a group of 4 up front. Colm Sheehan is in there. Richard Barry as well, 5th overall in the first Cycling Ireland Zwift League. And Mateo Chigala, the aforementioned, also joining this group. The riders behind, quick to seize the danger and see the danger of that one. So they've managed to reduce the advantage of that group of 4 up front, but an indication, I think, of the standard of the riders. Colm Sheehan also showing that he's got some pretty useful ability.
Yeah, names there that we recognise from the first Zwift League as well. Colm Sheehan, Richard Barry, Mateo Chigala, all off the front together there. So potentially a bit of man marking going on as we would call it in football, and that they're maybe even just keeping an eye on the riders who they know are likely to be up there at the finish.
Yeah, quick reminder that Heather Foley was the most prominent woman earlier on. We're struggling to try and pick up on information on how Heather's getting on. There are 1 or 2 other visiting riders that are amongst the A categories, and as I mentioned, it is probably worth paying due homage and note to the other categories out racing. We've got the B category riders with the likes of Kevin Gillies, Alan Dunn, Alan Lyons among their names, among their numbers that are racing with great ability and prominence today. The C category riders, all based, of course, on the watts per kilo that you're capable of putting out, are also riding well out there. As we just pick up Heather Foley. Heather Wilson, as was, she won the 2009 Irish National Road Race Championships in Dunboyne in County Meath, and the woman from Northern Ireland has been a very prominent racer, not just on 2 wheels, but also she's been quite the duathlete, won the national championship in duathlon. She's competed with distinction in triathlon as well. She's been a great all-round competitor for many years, and she's making a huge effort to try and get into the group. It's split to bits out the road, as you would have expected. Meanwhile, up front, that is a select group of riders that are contesting and challenging. As we look down through the orders, about 29 riders in there at the moment. Mateo Chigala, after his efforts, just riding along in the coattails of the other riders up front. But about 29 to 30 riders up front, including Jamie Gahan, as we've seen. He's making himself very prominent. Lindsay Watson, Price in there, Stuart Miller, Porrico Flynn, Colm Sheehan, who also was well to the fore in the first Cycling Ireland Zwift League. Gary Walker has shown his ability already this morning. Gareth Barry, another name to conjure with. And Nathan Keown decides to go for glory. 17 kilometres completed. It's not that far to the finish line, but it's a long way if you're close to or on the limit. And he simply has to be at 6.5 watts per kilo.
Yes, certainly it's the big attack here, and the biggest gap we've seen anybody get so far. So this is no accidental attack here. This is a full-blooded attack for the one here, so to speak. And with 7.5 kilometers to go, it might be a bit far to go solo. But Nathan's maybe hoping that somebody else can jump across to him, and then the two of them can work together to go to the line.
48 kilometres an hour in a virtual sense across the tarmac for Nathan Keown as he opens up an advantage of just over 2 seconds. It's narrow, it's not significant, but he has broken the toe. They're not getting a draft advantage, and Nathan Keown has gone for glory. Just under 5 miles of racing, or 8 kilometres. We're down to 7.5 kilometres remaining of this event, and they're just starting to reel him in ever so slightly, ever so surely, and it is no question, I think, that they're coming back up to him, led by Johan Del Dossi. Bartosz, another one of our visitors, he's just slipped down through the order as the names scroll away. Ronan Colleen is well up there. Alan Courtel, another one of our French visitors, also ensuring that Nathan Keown is called to account and is not going to, well, he's not giving up on this one. He's continuing to push on. And as you see behind, the group is not absolutely enormous. Is there going to be cooperation between them? They bring it back to just inside a second, and they're going to start getting the draft.
Yeah, they're certainly picking up a slipstream here now, and you can just see how quickly they close in once they get into that slipstream, or once they get that slipstream in effect there.
Nathan Keown, man who wore the yellow jersey in the junior tour not so long ago, so he's a strong rider, just setting out in his senior career. And for another man from Northern Ireland, North Down Cycling Club, another man from County Down indeed. Plenty of great County Down bike riders in this event. I wonder where Tommy Evans is, as he managed to make the lead group, former winner of Ross Tolchin way back in 1996, and he's kept himself very fit. Another man who's prominent in the triathlon world. Well, that has come to naught for Nathan Keown, but a brave effort. And as you mentioned, Ronan, in your opening comments at the top of the show, we have seen riders showing a little bit of ambition. They're actually trying to separate themselves. They're willing to make an effort, knowing that with power-ups they have a chance to recover perhaps, and also we're paying points down to the top 50 riders, so you're not completely out of contention if your one attack means that you drop out of the top 10.
This is it, exactly. The power-ups are definitely opening up the racing, giving riders confidence to attack here, and then the security of knowing that you're not going to be completely out of it. It's certainly, this for the style of course we had today, we've certainly had some great racing action, which had it not been for those two things, I think you might have seen a completely different race here today.
Jamie Gann's gone on the attack once more. Great to have so many of you along for the ride today, including the reigning champion of Cycling Ireland Zwift League racing, Chris McGlinchey's not in action this morning, and his tip for the top this morning is Mateo Chigala. Well, if Chigala is going to get the victory, he's got to get on terms with Jamie Gann, who's putting out over 6 watts per kilo and has opened up an advantage of approaching 2 seconds over the rest of the field. He's racing solo, racing for glory, 5.5 kilometres remaining.
Yeah, and this is just as we've seen Nathan Keown do previously. This is a sort of attacking that the riders who maybe don't consider themselves to have the best of sprints, they need to be making these moves now. We're inside the final 5 kilometres, and if you can get a gap here and hold it, it's not that long of an effort, relatively speaking, to get to the line. So certainly the sprinters won't have it all their own way today. They're going to have to watch. There's going to be attack left, right, and centre now the whole way to the finish, I imagine, with anybody in that front group who doesn't consider themselves to have a sprint ready to launch an attack as soon as Paul Gahan's caught here.
Well, it looks like he's back into the fold. We're watching Richard Barry and the effort that he's making, the man from Blarney Cycling Club, man from Cork. Richard, top 5 in Ireland Zwift League 1. He knows how to play this one. He's riding in the wheels, looks in control of his effort. A little bit of a change at the front. That attack has been neutralised. Richard Barry takes a moment to gather his thoughts, gather his lungs a little bit as well. We're down to the final 4.5 kilometres. Who has got a power-up available for the final play? And will they have saved the best for last? Who's got the strength to endure? It looks for all the world as if this one is going to come down to a sprint, Ronan. Or will there be time for a late attack?
There could well be one more attack here. We've got another rider, I don't think we've mentioned in there, Dennis Dunworth, another former junior national champion. A very, very tech-savvy rider in there, might be just holding off an attack just for the final kilometre here as well. And, the speeds are so high at this point now coming into the finish that, it has to be one all-out effort. You can't really make an attack and hope to recover again to go in the sprint. So it'll be one or the other now for riders coming into the finish here.
French visitor Alan Courtel close to the head of affairs. Will he break Irish hearts this morning in the first round of the Cycling Ireland Zwift League, the winter edition, the first of 8 rounds of competition that straddle Christmas. Pretty much every Saturday. We'll be a little bit of a break for Christmas, and then we'll be back in action in early January. But long way to go before we think about the final round. We're thinking about getting to the head of affairs inside the final 3.5 kilometres. It's all going to come down to the wire. It would appear Courtel on the front. Gareth Barry's in there as well. Robin Wilson, Paul MacArthur, Johan Del Dossi, another French rider, also in there. Paul MacArthur, Mark van der Harst, Colm Sheehan, Alan Glendinning as well. Gareth Carney, Fabio Martelli. All the names scroll through as they rotate close to the head of affairs. Nobody wants to be on the front this far from the line, but nobody wants to be too far from the front this close to the line, and that's the close, and that's the way that you have to try and work it, is to maintain a position close to but not quite on the front.
That's it, too close to the front and you're in the wind and expending energy there, and too far back, you'll be launching your sprint just to sort of get to the back wheels of the riders who will actually go on to fill the podium. So it is very much a positioning game here at the moment, and then the sprint on Zwift is slightly different, as we know, compared to sprinting in the real world, so we have a much longer effort, but still just that little bit early to be launching yet.
So we are approaching, just under 3 kilometres remaining. 14 miles of racing have been done at 33 miles per hour, as we've seen the slight change in the way the numbers are being presented to you on screen. That's not kilometres, that's miles indeed. So 35 miles per hour, what's that? That's well over 50 kilometres an hour. If you think this is going to be a slow wind-up, you got another thing coming. The hot money is on Mateo Chigala, one of the leading sprinters in Irish road racing, but he's going to have to make sure that this group is complete. And Jamie Gann clearly does not want this to come down to a sprint. 2.2 kilometres remaining, and Gann has gone for glory once more.
He certainly has, Jeremy. We can see his watts per kilo number there lighting up in red, which indicates that he is going pretty much all out here at this point, and he certainly mustn't fancy himself in the sprint.
Well, you've got to play your cards as you're given them. 8 watts per kilo. It's pretty impressive output from Jamie Gann, one of the top young up-and-coming riders who's gone for glory as he separates himself from the rest. His advantage up over a second, and it's that delicious prospect that nobody wants to use up their sprint in the role of closing this one down. He's just dangling off the front. It's 1.7 kilometres remaining. Tight, twisty, technical finish. Not that that's all that complicated on Zwift. He's absolutely laying out the watts to try to hold off the group behind. Cycling Chigala is showing close to the front. Michael Considine, Stuart Miller, a few names that have been loitering in the bunch with intent and now are waiting. 1 or 2 power-ups, and I'm not sure a lightweight power-up would be much advantage there. And that one has been closed down, and riders starting to think about using their aerodynamic benefit, and they've clicked the button to use that. And that's it for Gann. Great effort from him as he just drops out of contention. He played his card.
He sure did, and that was what he had to do. Just over a kilometre
remaining now. So onto the kite, 1,000 metres remaining. Richard Barry showing close to the head of affairs, but not quite on the front. This one is going to come down to the anticipated sprint finish. We've got a group of 27 riders that are close to the front. Eddie Brennan at the back of the group at the moment. Alan Courtel, the French rider, is right at the front. Cian Ryan is also there towards the front. Humber Kelly from the United Kingdom is in the mix, and everybody's using their draft effect to best effect inside the final 500 metres. Who's going to be able to take this one? The sprint finish, as expected and as anticipated, is going to be played out with Del Dossi hitting the front, Greeley there as well, and through the final 400 metres heading towards the line, Lindsay Watson goes for glory. Lindsay Watson challenged by Sjogren, the visitor. Sjogren's going to get this one. Watson runs out of breakfast, and as they race to the line, it's all about trying to time this one. Cian Ryan, and across the line now. Who's going to get it? Chigala. I was never in doubt, was it? Well, he didn't appear until the very last moment, but Mateo Chigala times it right. Or was it Dylan Humber-Kelly? Well, we're seeing on our screens at the moment that it's showing that Dylan Humber-Kelly has actually potentially just got that one from Mateo Chigala. Peter Wilkie also to the fore. Richard Barry, Colin Sheehan, Cian Ryan, Gary Walker, Ronan Killeen, Eddie Brennan and Marcus Sjogren rounding out the top 10 according to our details on screen at the moment. We wait for full confirmation of that, but that was the Late Late Show, all about timing.
I wouldn't like to be calling that now. It was a very, very close finish, and certainly we'll wait for confirmation, I think, before making a final call. Here we go.
Well, there you have it. There is confirmation, as I expect. This is just the provisional results, of course, of the first round of the Cycling Ireland Zwift League. Dylan Humber-Kelly has been credited with the victory, with a heart rate of 156 at that moment. No doubt it's coming down like a stone. Mateo Chigala, second across the line, just pipped on the line, but managing to hold off Peter Wilkie for the final podium position. Richard Barry, Colm Sheehan, Cian Ryan, Gary Walker, Ronan Killeen, Eddie Brennan and Marcus Sjogren rounding out the top 10. Other names to focus on through the top 20, Greeley, Keown, Ronan McDonald, Dennis Dunworth, as we mentioned, Novacek, Miller and Googe also well to the fore. Well, it looked for all the world as we came into that finishing sprint as if Lindsay Watson had timed it right. He's a great time trialist. He's a great all-round road racer, but perhaps just shot his bolt a little bit early, and hopefully we'll be able to catch up with the a replay of that finishing sprint as we just get the last couple of moments. Chigala looked as if he timed it to perfection, but it's indeed, well, we're seeing different names appearing now, and that from a different group, I suspect, just coming through to the line. No doubt about what we saw on screen. It was Humber-Kelly getting the win from Mateo Chigala. Although it looked for all the world like it was Chigala to the fore as they went across the line. We'll wait for full confirmation of that. And as I've said, all results are provisional in Zwift racing until they've managed to get the numbers crunched to perfection. And sometimes it can take a day or two to get it all worked out. So, if the conversations will rage long and hard from that one, Ron, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to comment on the finish that we had there. You know, it was the kind of sprint that we're hoping to see. You know, we're left wandering right the way up until the finish line, and even beyond the finish line now, we're still thinking who got the win there. It was so close. So great opening round of the Zwift League, and it's great to have some racing action to call here.
Certainly was. We'll certainly look forward with great interest to next week's second round of the Cycling Ireland Zwift League, and we'll be bringing that to you 10 a.m. as I understand it is the time again next Saturday, and we'll be streaming live on Facebook and other platforms throughout the morning on next Saturday. But that's it for the first round of the Cycling Ireland Zwift League. It's all done, and it just remains for me to thank Ronan McLaughlin, from myself, Declan Quigley. It's goodbye for now.